It's now 6:35. Sherry, we're on? Thank you, Sherry. My name is Dennis Ostick. I have the privilege of being the current chairman of the town's Economic Development Connect Communities Committee. And now I open the public information meeting for Broadband Expansion Project on August the 20th, 2019. Please allow me to read the public information meeting notice. On Tuesday, August 20, 2019, at 6:30 p.m., the Economic Development Connect Communities Committee of the Town of Boulder Junction will hold a public information meeting at the Boulder Junction Community Center, 5392 Park Street, Boulder, High Fish Trap Room, Boulder Junction, Wisconsin, 54512. This meeting is open to the public and is to allow information to be presented regarding the expansion of affordable and high-speed internet in Boulder Junction Township, and to answer public questions and comments relating to this topic. The public is encouraged to attend and participate in the meeting. A quorum of town board members and other town committee members may be in attendance at this meeting for information gathering purposes only, and no town board or town committee action will be taken at this meeting.
Thanks for letting me recite that.
The Economic Development Connect Communities Committee and its Broadband Workgroup have been engaged in meetings and discussions concerning the possible expansion of affordable broadband internet in our township. Thank you for joining us in tonight's presentation of public forum. Let me now ask Bill Nema to begin tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, everyone. Oh, the audience has grown since I sat down, so thanks for giving up your evening tonight. So I'm mic'd up. Usually I wouldn't be. We are recording it, so hopefully we'll be able to put it on the town's website so folks who can't join will be able to at least see what we've spoken about tonight. So Dennis is right. This is a public information meeting, and we're going to give you some information, but we're going to be looking for some feedback as well. A question before we start. Normally answer if you're comfortable. Who's pleased or content with your internet service? Really? Really? I thought there'd be one person. Wow, okay. Well, you come to the right place. So we're going to spend some time, probably about an hour, talking about the project that Dennis told you we're working on. There are a lot of moving parts with this. We're still in the learning mode, but we're much more knowledgeable now than we were a month ago. And a month from now, we'll be a whole lot more knowledgeable. So let's start off with number one, defining what is broadband. Broadband, or another term for it, is high-speed internet. What does that mean? That means that it's some type of data transfer. So for those of us who remember telephones, we used to pick them up and dial. It's kind of like that, but it's with data. And the data that you get either on your phone or your computer is now, it now uses this internet to flow this data, and data is a series of ones and zeros, and that's it. 1 0 1 0 1 0, and it goes at lightning speed, and that creates the data. That creates the stuff that we see on computer screens. You know, an RF engineer once told me it's magic, and you know, when you think about it, it is kind of magic. And the folks who build this stuff are incredible. And I think about 30 or 40 years ago, and then you fast forward to today, unbelievable. It's email, photos, web browsing, video, TV, movies, it's kind of on and on. The cloud. So the cloud is, instead of keeping data on your computer in your home, you now keep data in this cloud. That's part of the internet. and especially businesses, but within probably 5 years, almost all of us will be putting our data on the cloud. Now, you can look at it and say that's a potential security issue, and it is, but think about what happens when your computer crashes. And anybody who's used a computer, your computer has crashed. When it's in the cloud, that data is there, and it's backed up. It's a commercial system. So there are trade-offs. Some downsides, most of them are probably positive. Almost anything you can imagine is possible today. That's why the future is so interesting, because, you know, as we sit back, things that maybe we haven't even imagined, that's what the internet and broadband is going to be used for. Bandwidth, then, is how much information, how much data, and how fast it is, how much of that can we put through this pipe. So look at it from like a plumbing standpoint, and you're putting water in, and you have a funnel. So that funnel will take a lot of water, but as that narrows down and perhaps goes into a hose, you can put less and less and less water through. That's the internet, where up here you've got just tremendous data flowing back and forth, but at your home, you may be only able to siphon a little bit of data. I have an electrical comparison. You can have 30 amp service at your home, or you can have 400 amp service. It's the same thing with broadband. You can have 5 megabits, or you can have 1 gigabyte, 1 gigabit. How much speed do you really need? There are a number of kind of thresholds here. The first one is checking email and browsing the web. How many use the internet for that? Okay, most of you. Streaming high definition. HD is for high definition. This is Netflix, this is Hulu, this is Fubo, all of these TV services that are becoming popular. Who uses the internet for streaming TV? About half. Okay, that's good. The next step is the 4K content. That's a higher resolution movies and television, and then play competitive online gaming. This is where you're playing with somebody in Singapore, and this data has to go back and forth with next to no what's called latency. And latency is something that goes slower. And then this next one is online gaming plus downloading very large files. So who's doing this? A few. Okay. And that's the future. We're all going to be doing that in the not too distant future. So there's one other area I need to point out, and that's at the top. Businesses are different. Businesses need to download data from the internet, but they also need to upload data. And some of that data can be very large, and they can't have latency. So that's why it's most of these other services with the internet are called asymmetrical. You can download 25 meg, but maybe only upload 2 or 3. With businesses, they could easily have requirements of 1 megabyte or more, both download and upload. So who's in this category? Okay. All right, we got a couple. All right. As far as we can tell, most of Boulder Junction Township is in that 10 meg or less. That's where we're at. And keep in mind that if you have 25 meg, if you're fortunate enough to have 25 meg service, the more connected devices you have in your house, the slower your service is going to be. Because all of these devices are constantly reaching out and talking to the internet. Well, that slows everything down. Types of internet delivery. The first one that I listed is fiber optic cable. Now, fiber optic cable, and here is a photo in this corner. It's glass. And the data that is sent on light waves. On, off, on, off. Remember the data, the ones and zeros? It's kind of like that, but with light. So and it essentially is, it's the speed of light. It's very, very fast. Theoretically unlimited, today's speeds easily have 25 meg, I'm going to call it meg, to 100 meg. We then have a technology that has gotten very popular over the last few years called fixed wireless. These are coming off of, and that's this image here, that's coming off of a tower that's mounted somewhere. And that tower then is transmitting a signal to a home, which has an antenna at the top of its home, which pulls that signal in and then transmits it back out. It's a good system. Speeds can be up to 1 gig. In reality, most systems are 25 or less. And then we have cable. So cable, back in the early 1980s, most of us started getting cable TV. Well, as the industry moved along and there were different type of delivery models for television, the cable TV providers had to continue their revenue stream. So what they did was they expanded their service delivery for internet. And as you can see, potentially to 1 gig. The problem is you're sharing that data with a lot of others, so you will not normally get a gigabyte out of cable. But speeds are usually 1 to 40 meg, sometimes a bit more. And then we have 2 other technologies: cellular, your phones. And some of you are using your phones or one of these jetpacks for wireless internet. Most of that today is on 4G or LTE. It works pretty well. You can see that 300 meg is the maximum for LTE. There's a new service that you've heard about called 5G. 5G is that next generation. It can have speeds up to 10 gigabits, which is phenomenally fast. The problem is the distance is very short. So it's great for urban areas. Outside of urban areas, we'll see. And then finally, satellite. So today's speeds up to 25 meg. One of the challenges with satellites is there's latency, especially if you're video conferencing or doing some type of that activity, gaming. So these are the types of internet delivery available today. So here's our agenda. Maybe a little backwards, but wanted to give you kind of some baseline information, a little bit of education. We're going to talk about governance, why high-speed broadband is needed, our current broadband situation, and then tell you what the work group has been up to. And then, at the end, we're going to be looking for your feedback. So a little bit about governance. The Boulder Junction Town Board has commissioned the Boulder Junction Economic Development and Connect Communities Committee. Say that 14 times. And then as part of the Economic Development and Connect Communities Committee, we have a broadband group. Dennis, Steve Kuhn, and myself are on that work group. And we have gone through a lot of information, some of which we're going to share with you. And part of our public meeting mission is to get information from you. Why do we need high-speed broadband? In 2017, the Economic Development Committee sponsored a survey. And the response from that survey on this question was, what economic challenge is essentially holding Boulder Junction back? For those of you in back, number one response was the lack of broadband internet. The second response was an aging population, workforce shortage, and in fluctuation of tourism seasons. Those were the big hitters. And I don't know if that response surprised people or not, but that's the premise that we're operating on. What we know today is everything that we've known, and I think most of us in here are baby boomers, everything that we've come to know is changing, including the economy. Telecommuting, which is at the top, it is today's business. Many companies are requiring its employees, not asking them, but requiring their employees to work remotely. Why are they doing that? They're doing that, number one, so they can get talent from other areas, but the second reason is a very practical one. They want to drive down their facility costs, and it's working. So in my professional job, I telecommuted for over 20 years. And it worked, you know, as long as you had, where is it? It's here. As long as you had a decent internet connection, you could work from anywhere in the world. And that's the economy today. Telehealth and telemedicine. These are two areas that really kind of blow your mind. Telehealth, what is being done with remote diagnostics, what's being done with remote treatment today, just today, is incredible. You think about a year or two into the future, the tsunami is here. And health organizations are going to be moving to that model where you'll be in your home and you'll go through your examination by your doctor, who you'll look at on a video screen, and you'll talk about the treatment options. So it's here. Teleeducation is another one that's interesting. So much of the education today is done via the internet. And for students who have that capability, that's really a positive for them. And if they don't, they're missing out. What these things do is offers a stable and sustainable economy. And it is a global economy, and you know, there's some good sides and downsides about that, but it stabilizes things, especially for a place like Boulder Junction. And then the thing that we have learned and we will learn is communities are either going to grab this opportunity or they're going to miss out. So why is the investment essential? Marketing to young families, entrepreneurs, eco-friendly businesses, which may be a little bit different than what you thought of Boulder Junction, but it really offers diversification. When those new folks come in, it creates all types of other support services as well. And those support services can grow very, very quickly. We're going to talk about the economy and that diversification and stabilization. It helps weather the economic downturns. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're in our longest economic recovery period in history. There's one coming. There is one coming. Investing in our children. So on Thursday, Brent Jaliski is going to join us when we have our second public information meeting. And he gave us a glimpse. So Brent runs the North Lakeland Elementary School. And one of the things that you can't do is assign homework, internet-based homework, to students, because some have internet, some don't. And he doesn't want to create an unfair situation. So all of the children are suffering. So to invest in our futures, we need to provide those students with that capability. And then finally, I already spoke about telehealth. What it does, what it means for all of us, is it keeps us in our homes longer. And it keeps us from going to appointments constantly. There are some appointments we're going to have to go to, but many others we could do in the comforts of our home. Other communities are in front of us. So Land O'Lakes is completing a 4-year project right now. Bayfield County, they have created their project, and they are already marketing their communities as broadband-friendly communities. Wouldn't it be great if we could put something about Boulder Junction here? This was interesting. So everybody knows Amazon. Amazon is this generation's Walmart. Wisconsin is in the top 10. Wisconsin is not in too many top 10s, but it's in the top 10 in Amazon's small business growth category. That's the good news. And there are a lot of small businesses that sell their products on Amazon. But here's the downside. Wisconsin is 36th in broadband connectivity in the United States. So somehow we've kind of missed the boat. And Boulder is in that category. Maybe we're in a little bit better situation than some other communities, but it's not great. And we'll talk about that. The current broadband situation in Boulder Junction. We have about 1,800 parcels in the township. As well as we can tell, we're not sure, but we think that 20% or under, it's probably under, have access to 25 megabits. Most of them are less. And 25 meg is the government declaration of high-speed internet. So the current providers, CenturyLink, the cable company is also a provider, HughesNet, which is a satellite company, Viasat, which is another satellite company, and then Verizon Data. Some folks use Verizon Data. Those appear to be our current providers. And then, so I'm not going to talk through this in great detail, but the bottom line is the town is not particularly well covered with high-speed broadband. That's why we're all here tonight. Because remember, nobody is satisfied with their internet. And I gotta say, we want feedback from you. That, to me, speaks volumes. I thought there would be at least 5, maybe 10 people who would raise their hand and say, we're pleased. Wow. Over the last 6 weeks, I guess, we've been trying to map our current fiber optic infrastructure in the town. CenturyLink is our primary telecommunications provider. They will not give us that information, so we've had to go out and find that information. We're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 80% there. We're not 100% there. But CenturyLink was able to get government grants here over the last few years, and they invested in Boulder Junction. So we're not starting from the ground up. We do have a fair amount of fiber optic cable, maybe not the equipment to drive all that speed, but a fair amount of fiber optic cable in the township. And I want to just go through some maps. So you're going to see quite a few maps here over the next few minutes. This is the business district of Boulder Junction. CenturyLink has an office. This is going north on Highway M, out High Fish Trap Lake, and then off toward Whittig's Resort, which is on Fish Trap Lake. So they have fiber optic cable, which is that highway that streams a lot of data. But what CenturyLink does is they then convert it from fiber to their copper lines. And that's the hang-up. So there's a limit on how far they can provide decent speed. It's the old way of doing things. It works, kind of, but it takes a lot of maintenance and it takes a lot of cost. So the communities, really all of these residents here, that's how they get their internet. They're getting it through DSL. And then there's another leg, not sure where it comes from, but off of Dairyman's Road, and then it goes out High Lake Road. High Lake, and it terminates at High Lake. So this is Fish Trap Lake, this is High Lake, this is Rush Lake. It terminates here. So when you think about that, that's 3+ miles. That's a lot of fiber that's in the ground. So let's look to the southwest. Boulder Junction, Boulder Lake, County Highway H, County Highway K. And these are nodes. These are these kind of transfer stations, if you will, between the fiber optic cable and then their copper distribution network that goes to your home. So we have nodes along, a couple of nodes along Highway 51, on County Highway H, a couple of them on North Creek Road, one at North Creek and M, and out on Highway K. And this is in the far southwest corner. So Trout Lake, CenturyLink has fiber. They have a node just near Upper Gresham along Highway 51 and then coming down on County Highway M. The red line is Frontier's backbone. So Frontier today is not providing service, internet service in the township, but their backbone goes through our township. And I am right, Dennis, they're not providing that service today. Yeah, correct. Dennis, they're not providing that service today yet? I don't think they are. So there's, some talk that they may be doing a special project, but this is what we have today. One of the first steps the team took, the work group took, was to develop a strategy. The first thing we did was develop objectives. So what do we want to do? Where do we want to get? Step 2 was determine the best options and suppliers. We're in the process of doing that right now. Step 3 was design an expansion plan. That's got to be something that's done in concert with the suppliers because obviously, we just showed you the maps. We don't have the information they do, but it's got to be a partnership effort. Secure community support and commitment. That's what we're doing here tonight, in addition to getting your feedback. Create and leverage those relationships with the suppliers. That one can't be understated. And I'm sure those of you who have had interface with either CenturyLink or Verizon know that customer service might be at an all-time low. So we got to somehow improve that. And we think we can with leveraging those relationships. Grants. I'm going to talk more about grants in a moment. Executing those projects as soon as we can, and then that culminates with marketing Boulder Junction as a high-speed broadband community and a best place to live, which would be pretty cool. Here are our working objectives. So on the left, this is our 1 gigabit plus. Concentrating on the downtown Boulder Junction district, this 3BD, to be able to market that to businesses as a 1 gigabit area. That's what companies are looking for, and there's a lot of chatter about that today. And then, really for everybody else, we need to get everybody else to at least 25 meg or more. So how do you do that? Do you do that through DSL? Do you do it through fixed wireless? Do you do it through satellite? Do you do it through fiber? There's no question that fiber optic cable is the future of high-speed internet. There's no question at all. Okay, so we're going to have a series of 5 slides, and I'm going to go through them quickly. It's going to show the target areas. And we got information on the parcels from Vilas County Online, and kind of went through and did our own evaluation. So this is Boulder Junction Northeast, and it is interesting. You know, maybe some folks who have been involved with the roads project kind of got to have a glimpse of what Boulder Junction really looks like and where the parcels and the residents are. But this has really been an eye-opener for us. So what we call Boulder Junction Northeast, here's Boulder Lake, here's Oswego, Fish Trap High. This is Dairyman's out here. There are 509 parcels in this district. That has to be a target area. And as we'll go through and look at each one, this one has the highest number of parcels, which, you know, I sat back and thought, wow, that's really something. So that's a fair number of parcels. Next is Boulder Junction Southeast. So the business district is here. We're somewhere right in there. This is the north end of North Trout Lake. We have White Sand Lake and Lost Canoe. And Dennis, I did find, where's Dennis? I did find a Wool Lake there. So you were covered. So we have Wool Lake, this area here. Let's see, where are we? So as you can see, it's less dense from a population perspective. And hopefully you're starting to grasp one of the challenges that these providers face in bringing internet, especially stuff that's planted in the ground, to a community like us. Because they can go to Milwaukee or Chicago or Green Bay or Minneapolis and have thousands of customers in a small area. Here, we're talking probably about 1,300 to 1,400 at the most. So they've got to figure out what their return on investment and then make that balance and make those decisions. And that's where the grants come in. This is Boulder Junction West. This was a bit of a surprise. So this is Highway 51. Wild Rice Lake has a lot of parcels. Up on the top, that's the south end of Island Lake, and the I guess it would be the Northwest Business District of Boulder Junction. Okay, this is Boulder Junction Northwest, Island Lake, Clear Lake, and also Big Lake. There are a few parcels there as well. Mid-South, and then the next one is Deep South. I bet you didn't know Boulder Junction had a Deep South. All right. Really Upper Gresham area, and then what do we have here? I think this is south. So we've got a couple of properties on North Trout, and then I think this is Muskellonge. And then this is the Deep South, the southeast corner of Trout Lake. We have Little John and then a few properties on Man Lake. So if you've been adding up those parcels, that comes to, I think, 1,313. So if we've got 1,800 parcels, we're still missing 400 and change. So I'm not quite sure how that shook out, but it is about 73%. Grant opportunities. Yes, there are grant opportunities out there. The first one that I want to talk about is highlighted in the upper left-hand corner. In the Wisconsin Public Service Commission that administers quite a few oversight groups. For 2020-2021 has 44 million in funding. That's up from about 15 million over the last 2 years. Will that hit 100% of communities that apply for the grant? It won't. It won't. But it's sure a lot more than that 15 million over the last 2 years. So it will help. There's another grant opportunity that's coming from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm not going to go through each one of these, so, but I do want to talk about the USDA. The CAF funding. So there were 2 rounds of CAF funding, CAF and then CAF 2. That money has all been spent. Boulder Junction benefited because CenturyLink invested in their fiber optic infrastructure in Boulder Junction. They won't tell us how much. Just looking at it and thinking about how much this costs, I'm going to take a wild guess and say between 1 and 2 million of your tax dollars went in to investing in fiber optic infrastructure in Boulder Junction. We are in better shape than other communities from that perspective. The new program, that new federal program, is going to be administered by the USDA. And we're still in the process of learning what's going to be available, when it's going to be available. And then there is the alphabet soup of government agencies, and they all have some type of grant funding. Some Boulder Junction might be eligible for, others maybe not. But there is funding out there. There's also telehealth grants, foundation grants, we can't overlook that. Donations from individuals, you get the idea. There is a lot of funding. And in some cases, you have more funding than what you do time. So there's a lot of opportunity. Next, steps. So the first next step is to issue a scope of work to suppliers. Get proposals back, review those proposals, and then make a determination on which one seems to make the most sense. This is the first of several public information meetings, because you need to be actively involved in this and give the town some direction on where we need to go. We're going to present a recommended solution to you and the town board, and then request funding and approval. So let me just step back and talk about the PSC, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission. They do fund projects through grants, and usually how that works is somebody, either a community, a nonprofit group, or a co-op, needs to also invest, and then the PSC will usually cover about 50% of the cost of the project. As I was talking with someone before we started, there are these other grants out there. Theoretically, if the grants come in, a community may not have to pay anything. Now, there's no guarantee with that, but theoretically that could be true. Apply for grants and then execute projects. All right, so what do we need from you? Feedback. That's really critical. The first question about who's happy, that was really good feedback. But we need others. Your preference on a direction. You know, what kind of technologies do you like? What do you like about your service? What do you like about other services that you've seen? That's the type of feedback that we're really looking for. And then your support. So we talked about the reasons why to invest in broadband for Boulder Junction. The opportunity is there. And as you also saw, we wouldn't be first. Other communities have been first. All we need to do is be better. And we have the ability now to learn from those communities so we can be better, faster, stronger. That was a $6 million man, wasn't it? So what does that result in? Really a more sustained economy, diversifying our businesses in the township, supporting or getting support from these new businesses, improving and sustaining property values. And then, so I'm not sure how much the town board has spoken about this, but my wife Sue and I came from a community northwest of Appleton. And we had a small, it was growing, we had an industrial park. And there were quite a few diverse businesses in and around there. This is a rural farming community. And it was amazing how those other diversified businesses kept our tax base down. That's something else to think about. So it'll likely be an electors item in November, just kind of projecting forward here. Your support is absolutely essential, but before we even get to that point, we need your feedback. Okay, now it's your turn. Mike. So if we could, Barb is going to take some notes down. I may take some notes kind of as a car park here. I'd like this to just be as, free-flowing as what we can make it, just as informal. If you got an idea, if you've got, a gripe that you want to get out, you want to hear about that, at some point we'll cut it off and let everybody go home and enjoy their evening. But I want to give it over to you. What do you want to tell us?
Has there been any study done as to the amount of, I got a big voice, no problem. As to how many people are going to be affected by CenturyLink pulling their cable TV service? Do we have any idea how many customers they have in Boulder Junction?
Well, the question was, is there going to be any impact on CenturyLink pulling their cable TV service?
Actually, that wasn't the question.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking the question is let's remember, they're leaving in October, is that my understanding? That we'll no longer have CenturyLink cable TV service from October?
Well, CenturyLink doesn't provide the service. There's a company called Carbon that does.
Okay, well,
we've heard some stuff.
Regardless,
Yeah.
if they're gone,
Yep.
so you have satellite TV, right? We're known for weather, snow, and a lot of trees, so satellite is not very reliable. That means the demand on the bandwidth that we currently have is going to significantly go up. And I'm just going to take a wild guess. There's a lot of Packer fans in here, and that's right in the middle of football season. And your election is in November, right, ready for the playoff run. It's going to seem to me that this is going to be a much bigger issue than it is now, as far as general public knowledge of this, because a lot of people are going to be wondering how they're going to be getting TV. A lot of games are going to be missed. So. And I don't know, does Usenet have Fox? I know we had to get NFL's ticket to get it, so I don't even know if they carry Fox, so games may not even be available.
Yeah, so there are a number of different services today that will stream TV. So you're right, when there's more stress on the system, that can affect all of us. DirecTV, they're a satellite provider. They've changed their frequencies that they deliver service to your home. So you have, let's put it this way, it limits their customer base a little bit more. There is Dish, that's a supplier in the community. But to answer your question, I don't think that we have seen anything that's official. But what we're hearing is that there are 20 some odd customers that use cable internet. Does that help at all?
No, I'm cable TV.
Yes.
Is that what's being, I know people that have gotten notices saying they will no longer have the ability to get cable TV as of October.
Okay.
So my neighbor being one of them, so literally I'm gonna teach her how to stream what she wants.
Yep.
This is gonna be community-wide. I'm assuming she's not the only one that's gonna be affected. That's gonna significantly affect everybody that does any kind of streaming. So you get home from work and you're used to streaming whatever your show is. Everybody else in town is getting home from work at the same time, and if now you have a much expanded customer base doing the same thing, everyone is gonna slow down. And now, what my point is, come November, this is gonna be a much wider problem than just the people in this room. People that don't think they have a problem are gonna have a problem.
Oh, you're spot on, because satellite service today, it's not cheap. So people are cutting that satellite, they're going to a different service if it's streaming, or it's probably streaming. The stress on those systems has exponential growth all the time. There's no question about it. So thanks for that input. Who else? Ann?
So I think one of the things that maybe is not as clear yet with this issue is that what we're looking at today is not going to support a lot of the things you talked about that are coming in the future, especially when we talk about somewhere in the range of 1,500 or 1,800 parcels that may be using it at various points in time. We know some of those are seasonal, but we also know how our population explodes in the summer, so just imagine, the numbers at that point. So when we talk about education, when we talk about telehealth, when we talk about some of those things, the capacity we need to build for is not today. It's something we can't even imagine, but I think that's a piece of it that the community needs to really understand, because we can go cheap, and 5 years from now, we're gonna be back in the same boat. Or we can think more broadly about the fact that things are going at such a rapid rate, and more of us are going to be using these services. And we start getting those businesses in town that we've talked about wanting to attract. So I think it's important for people to understand what we're used to today to do email won't support the future.
Yeah, and so for the recording, Ann's point was we got to think about the future and those new services that we may not have today. And you're absolutely right. That's why when we go back, and this session is critical, but when we go back, I think the work group agrees that we got to get fiber in the ground to the premise. That's it, because if we were in southwest Minnesota, where there are hardly any trees and a lot of flat land, these fixed wireless systems work really, really well. They don't work so well when we have 120-foot pine trees and the rest of the canopy that we have. And we live on lakes, which are usually in a hole. It just doesn't work particularly well. Thank you, Ann. Yes, sir.
Are there other nearby communities that have already addressed this problem, and if so, how have they done it?
Well, I guess the one that we're most familiar with is Land O'Lakes. And Land O'Lakes is just adjacent, it's on the Michigan border, just adjacent to Highway 45. They contracted with a local company, and they put in fiber optic cable to the premises, to the business and to the house. And they're not covering 100% of all their parcels either, but they're hitting their primary target areas. Bayfield County, I showed the marketing image from Bayfield County. They did the same thing, but from the county perspective. So they put in a lot of fiber in the ground. They're a little bit different up there because they have a co-op. And a co-op, I was explaining this before, a co-op is a type of an organization that really started developing in the 1950s to deliver electrical service primarily to rural areas. They were usually not for-profit companies, they were non-profit. So in the 70s and 80s, they started providing electrical and telephone service. Well then, here comes the 90s, so what do? They just go to that next step and they start providing internet services. They don't have profitability goals of 35 to 50%. Many of them are nonprofit. So they can deliver the service, they can do the capital projects, and if they have a return of 5, 10%, they're happy with that. So, not quite plain apples to apples. Yes?
What are Land O'Lakes speeds?
Land O'Lakes starts at 25. They have packages that start at 25, go to 100. That's their regular package, and then they have business packages as well. So there you can get speeds to a premise up to 1 gig.
100 up and down. Down.
Exactly. That's
Up
their
and down.
standard
So that's fiber
package.
optics to your home.
That's
up,
their
down.
standard package. Yes.
Wow.
Laura?
Do you know how Land O'Lakes paid for that improvement?
And so the question is, do we know how Land O'Lakes paid for the improvement? And they had 2 sources of funding. One was the PSC grants, and then the other was the commitment from the township, and the township invested in it as well.
So is it Century providing the service? Who's providing their service?
In Land O'Lakes?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a company out of Eagle River called ChoiceTel. It's not CenturyLink. So they were not supported by CenturyLink, they were supported by Frontier. And Frontier had next to nothing in the ground, their service was next to non-existent. So they decided they were gonna go in an alternative direction. Oh, Barb?
Do we know what their costs were?
The costs in Land O'Lakes, so their first capital project was just under $500,000. And that was in 2016, and they're finishing up 16, 17, 18, 19, the 4-year project. They're finishing up, and I don't remember what their total cost is.
But the town is providing 1/2 of the cost?
The town committed to 50%.
Right.
Yes.
So should we go forward with this, would we be forced to use CenturyTel because they have the most fiber in the ground now? Is that the logical?
Yeah, so the question is, are we forced to use CenturyLink? And the answer is, we are not. We are not. We're gonna have to look at it because obviously there's a sunk investment here. And somebody else who has to bring their pipe in, their backbone has to bring it in from a long way away. And we have to weigh all of that. Yes?
How did Land O'Lakes get such a jump on it, as opposed to Boulder, would be my question, just moving back to town. What was the difference in demo, and what was the catalyst for?
Yeah, so the feedback that we received was their service was next to non-existent. So they were really starting out where maybe Boulder Junction was 7 years ago. And then
Desperation then?
yeah, they
Yeah.
just, and they weren't, how do I put this? They wanted to go a different direction away from Frontier. Just leave it at that.
And if they started from almost ground zero, they had a choice to make, whether it was satellite, whether it was copper, or whether it was fiber, and they chose fiber, Bill?
Yeah, they chose fiber, which, looking at everything, that's what these big companies are using to backhaul their internet today. And fiber, when you put fiber in the ground, and Dick, you may have a better sense of this, but we're being told that it has a life expectancy from 35, or from 30 to about 45 years. Is that stretching it? Okay. All right.
but there's constantly new technology to get more and more bandwidth out of that chunk of glass.
Yeah, true, that's right. And the thing is, let's not forget, when we think about the copper that CenturyLink has in the ground today, that stuff is probably 50 years old. And you know, over time, copper itself doesn't degrade, it corrodes, especially on the connection points. And you know, when you go around, you see these little pedestals. Some of them, the fronts are hanging off, and you know, the wire is exposed. Little critters like to chew on that rubber and make their nests, and you get the idea. Yes, sir.
Is the fiber that's in the ground proprietary, and that nobody can use it except CenturyLink? Or can another startup company come in here and say, FCC requires that we get to use your backbone?
So the question is CenturyLink's fiber proprietary? And the answer is, they own it. Would they consider leasing it to somebody? If the money's right, they probably would, but that's really not their primary business.
So if you decide not to go with CenturyLink, new fiber would have to be laid out, correct?
If the solution is fiber, yes.
And even if it went with CenturyLink,
New
more
fiber.
fiber would need to be laid.
Yes, oh yes.
And that's where, in any of these projects, especially as it gets to what's called the last mile, is difficult because as you saw with the maps, we got quite a few miles. And we have miles with no subscribers because it's going through 87% of state-owned land. And that might be different than some communities as well. But you know, you look at it and say, look, we got to provide that service, we got to get it done. Yes.
How does that work for new homes being built that are not part of what's already on the maps?
Help me with the question.
You're building a new home and you're not near, you know, anything that's on the parcels that you're saying are already inhabited.
Okay, got it. You know, we'll do our best to work that out. You know, if, like we talked about in our work group, if somebody buys 160 acres, you know, in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and that's one property, one subscriber, delivering something to them is gonna be tough, and it's gonna be expensive, so we just have to, we gotta work that out.
Yeah, it's gotta be practical for the taxpayer, and look at it like certain things, but it's not that they couldn't get fiber, but they might have to pay to get it from the backbone of their house, so that they could get it.
And that's the incentive for
And
CenturyLink.
is CenturyLink open?
Sorry.
Customers.
Sorry, Dennis, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would just say CenturyTel can service Boulder Junction with 1,800 customers, or they can go to Minocqua and service 6,000. So if I'm on the board of directors for CenturyTel, where am I gonna go? I'm gonna go where the customers are.
And that's it, so,
That's our competition.
so CenturyLink is a big company, they're the fourth largest telco internet provider in the United States today. They have aggressive, and what did I use the term, vicious objectives when it comes to the return on investment. Their shareholders want that investment as high as what they can. So Dennis, you're absolutely right. If you're making, you have a pot of money that's this big, and where are you gonna invest that? You're gonna invest that where you can make the most return of what you can. That's how business operates. So that's why communities like Boulder Junction and like Boulder Junction are in the shape we're in.
So one of the things to think about is Boulder is now served with DSL, and to CenturyLink's mind, pretty well. And so what they think is that if they switch everybody over to fiber, that a lot of those people are just gonna stay at the same speed that they are now, even though they're working off of fiber instead of DSL, and so they'll be paying the same amount as they were paying before. So for CenturyLink, there's no financial incentive to do it, so that's where the town needs to step in and give some financial incentive. If we work with CenturyLink, that's how that would have to work. Does that make sense?
Sorry. hold on.
Actually, you kinda answered my question. My
Okay, I'm
question
sorry.
was going to be, how open is CenturyLink to servicing and going from where they have already laid their fiber to individual houses?
So the question is, how open and flexible, maybe I'll
Right.
use that term, is CenturyLink with kind of changing their business model? I would say they're listening. Did I say that right? They're listening. Dick, sorry.
What kind of support and administrative structure do we need here in the township to pursue these goals, to be eligible for grants? That takes a lot of work, a lot of expertise. Filing for grants is a challenge. That takes resources.
Yeah, so Dick's question is, what kind of resources or administrative structure do we have in the town to especially file for these grants or to do these projects? Well, the answer is, and this was an eye-opener for us, most of these suppliers, they'll write the grants. And they've done it before, they know how to do it. The town's commitment then is to get as much support as what we can from partners. And partners can be anybody. And the director for the Broadband Group, we had her here a couple months ago and met with her. What she said was, when they look at grant requests, they concentrate on the ones that really have partnerships in place. So that's our opportunity, is to partner with as many organizations and get as much support as what we can. So when our application gets to Madison, they have a conversation, Boulder Junction, you win. All right? And I want to come back to that. You're right. Writing grant applications can be challenging. The Wisconsin PSC makes it pretty easy. You can go online and you can look at the grant applications over the last 5 years. There's not much to them. I mean, they really, government, well, I shouldn't say that. They make it easy. Does that help, or do you have a follow-up?
Writing grants is one aspect. Administering the money, the financial control. This is like running a corporation. Where are resources to do that?
Yeah, so I think it's, I think you're referring to doing this project. And what we can look at is Land O'Lakes, and Land O'Lakes, they did it with their town structure. So that's how they did it. And so so Boulder Junction is going through a road projects that we think is much more significant in cost. And it's coming up on completion. So I'm not minimizing your concern, but at least what we're hearing from other communities is it's not that big of an undertaking because the suppliers do a lot of the legwork.
Do you envision this being similar to when they ran natural gas through town, where, for lack of a better word, you'd have pipelines, and then each individual residence would say, yes, I want to get hooked up, and depending on the distance to that pipeline, in other words, each property owner is going to probably have some charge, and depending on, do you envision that?
That's, so the question is, how is it going to work with the providers, whatever provider we select? Are they going to it'll be up to the subscriber? That answer is yes. You know, you can't force people to do it. You can't force people to trench on their property. And then the second piece of that is, we're going through that right now, because what Land O'Lakes did, and this is not confidential information, you can see it online. What Land O'Lakes did is they bought this equipment for, I think the first grant covered 350 homes. So you bring this fiber in, just like your natural gas, and instead of having a meter, there is this optical network terminal, just a little box that the fiber goes into. And then from there, you can plug your telephone into it, you can plug your Cat 5 or Cat 6, your computer cable into it, boom, you're up and running. So Land O'Lakes bought those with the grant money. We're still sorting through it. I mean, do you have like some input as to, you know, where we should be thinking?
Okay, because one way to look at it would be say, okay, one of the options would be for us to say, okay, let's just run the cable, and then the people are up to running to the house themselves. Or we could say, okay, we're gonna have the town pay to run the cable to the houses. You know, that would, people would have to sign up for it ahead of time, et cetera, so we know what it would be. But those are the options. I don't know, you know, I don't know what's fair or not fair to the taxpayer at the end of the day, right?
Follow, what do you see as a timeline on this, a realistic timeline?
So the realistic timeline is, it depends upon what solution / supplier we go with. It could be 2020, when we do the first phase of it. Could be 2021 before we do it. So those are kind of weighing all the options, and this having discussions with the providers is taking place right now. We've got to sort through that. We're going to be looking at different comparisons either way, because if we have to bring somebody in here that's starting from scratch, obviously that's different than working with a supplier who already has a base here. And Dick, that kind of goes in your direction a little bit. You know, how do you sort through all that? Ann?
Is the expectation this might be a multi-year project?
Yes, and that yes was it's a multi-year project. Preferably as short as possible.
Just a quick, on your graphics up there, you didn't designate the unserved area of the township. Did you have any idea of what the unserved people are? You mentioned the underserved, but not the unserved.
Yeah, so anybody with a telephone line should be able to get something. If it's just a little bit better than dial-up speed. So let's ask, hopefully we've got a representation. Is there anybody here who uses CenturyLink, who gets less than 1 megabit?
Download or upload?
A down. You get less than 1 down?
You mentioned the last mile.
Yeah.
Well, okay. On your map, you showed the line that kind of, CenturyLink's line that comes to the school. That's where the fiber optic ends.
No, it doesn't.
That's what they were told, that's what
Yeah,
I was told.
I know, there's a lot of misinformation out
And
there.
then from Boulder Junction, goes to Bear Lake Road, and it ends. I'm about halfway in there. And so actually, my phone line comes from Manitowoc. The next road over comes from Boulder Junction. So they have the same issue.
Yeah, and
When you had, this spring, you had.
Mark Scribner from
Right.
CenturyLink.
Yeah, he came over and, looked things over and he, for a short time it was up beyond one, and then it went back down, and he says, you're just out of luck. That's what he said, he says, CenturyLink's not gonna.
well,
do that last mile, or
that's not a great response. That's not what you want to hear from a provider.
Well, that's why I have no, faith in CenturyLink working with this.
Okay, so we've got, what do we have, maybe 25 people, 30 people in here. We have 2 that are way underserved. So who gets less than 5? So we got the 2, anybody else?
So my modem was supposed to be up to 20. Well, it was up to 10 the beginning of this month when we got the modem. But it's been really slow, so they're doing a speed test. So even though my modem says I should be getting 20,
Yep.
in reality, the last few weeks I've been getting 2.
You've been getting 2.
And I'm at the top.
Yeah, and you use CenturyLink?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be coming tomorrow to look at it, but.
Well, we're not gonna bash suppliers here, but, one thing, so in the corporate world, there's this merge, purge, and submerge that goes on. And CenturyLink has bought a lot of different companies over the last 10 years, and their business plans are all over the place, and I think they're trying to right themselves as an organization. So one thing that is obvious is when you call corporate, is not necessarily what happens on the ground. And that you might be experiencing some of that. So this is some of the, if we can help with leveraging the suppliers, we need to be doing that to help you. With a big organization, that's not the easiest thing to do. Jake?
Bill, you talked about partners, and the one organization I think about is University of Wisconsin on Trout Lake. There's probably some guy who's a vice president down in Madison who has the private telephone number of the CEO of a lot of these organizations, okay? And we shouldn't be messing around with, local district guy and the local whatever, from a service standpoint, because if this is something that we wanna get businesses hooked on, so to speak, this is the heroin, we better make sure we've got a constant supply of this stuff. What was a week ago or 10 days ago, when I guess somebody ran over a cable and we had no internet here in town, right? Zip. And, I've had roles where that kind of information is very good, and you need to have that kind of a situation, but you need somebody with some oomph that can make it stick. You and I calling the CEO, we're gonna get somebody that's trained to handle the CEO's problems.
Sure. Yeah, you're right, and I think you're talking about the station on North Creek, just off of North Creek. That's a good tip. We haven't spoken with them, but they have CenturyLink fiber that goes in. So my sense is, like another large place out here, they just paid to have it put in. So they're getting a business service, and paying for it too. But that's a good lever.
We're down in County N.
Oh, and I'm sorry, that's N. Thank you. Who else? Anyone else? It's 10 to 8. Yes, sir.
Did you do a history on Troysdale?
A history on Troysdale.
Company?
Yes.
And you're familiar with his first run up to Conover?
Yes.
The other question would be, how many grants, first of all, are you familiar with the Vilas County Broadband Committee?
Yes.
How many grants did Vilas County get? What was the amount of Vilas County grants?
I don't know that.
There are 14 towns in Vilas County, and others are doing the same thing.
Sure.
Grant writing and stuff. Ted Baldwin from Troysdale, he's coming up half AG now, he's gonna come into Sanger. With his fiber.
Yep.
And that's how he got to, towns in both regions.
Yeah.
And Saint Germain also. That's a thought for Boulder Junction.
Yeah, it is. And the other thing that we didn't talk about, and so for businesses, this is important. Maybe it's not as important for residents. We don't have any redundancy. So Jake, as you mentioned, the line gets cut, we're done. We don't have any internet service. And that's really not a good situation, especially for businesses, because the way you really want to run that is you want to have one line coming in one way and another line coming in the other way, and they don't meet. They're completely redundant. So if Joe on the backhoe rips up a fiber line, you don't go down, because it's like the electrical distribution network. smart enough to reroute. That's a whole nother piece that we gotta consider.
Another question, CenturyLink has the rights to Boulder Junction, and that's why Frontier is not,
Well, so the question is, does CenturyLink have the rights to Boulder Junction? So we were speaking with Dick earlier, and Dick worked for telecommunications industry during the deregulation. And prior to regulation, they had their territories. And now supposedly they don't have territories, but they don't usually like to, cross. And do they not like to cross because of dilution of their subscriber base, which is just a business decision, or is it some other reason? Who knows? Who knows? So, for who knows how long, CenturyLink, or one of the companies that they purchased, has been Boulder Junction's provider. Jake.
I'm not comfortable with the technical issue here, but, we got a wonderful thing here a couple of years ago when Wisconsin Public Service went underground, right? And that has worked very well. Is there any way that we can piggyback on that effort and come through some of the same pipe, whatever they put underground, and get service that way?
That's a great thought, and we've had some conversations, because you would hope that when there's a big project like that, all these infrastructure companies would get together and, do it together. They don't. And we can't do anything for that. The technologies to use power lines for internet distribution is fraught. Technically it's possible, and it's been done, but it's fraught with all kinds of problems. And it spews these what's called spurious emissions out into the environment, and we've got so much data flying around, and the more stuff that we put on wireless, your range goes down and down and down. And I don't think we've reached a saturation point yet, but technologies like that use power lines for data distribution can pollute the airwaves. That's a good thought, though. Okay, let's take 2 more questions, and then we're going to call it a night. Thanks.
or that Jake had just talked about. It's dollars and cents, just like Century lines are dollars and cents. It was more economical to put the lines underground for the long-range plan of providing service, which they have to provide. So it was cheaper in the long range to put lines underground and do the underground service. So there was an economical difference to the people, like the service companies, to do that. That was the reason for that. So it's dollars and cents, like we said before. That's the big thing right now.
You're right. So electrical distribution is a necessity we all can agree upon. Everybody does need that. But internet, especially with the television, it's kind of right there. It's right there. But it's probably just a notch below yet. But in 2 or 3 years, it's right there. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs it. Okay, one more.
No, that's not a good question. Somebody might have a better question.
Well, we're not going to compare the value of questions. So.
Just for information, Washington Island off the tip of Green Bay.
Yes.
They started out with public service fibers firms there.
Yeah. So under the water, yes, we've asked about that because that can cut down some distance by putting them under our lakes. We haven't gotten an answer about that. I'm sure there are all kinds of environmental issues. One more? You want to close this out? No? Anybody else?
I don't have a question. I've just got the statistics going back to the CAF2 thing. And CAF2 was decided by census box. I don't know if everybody knows it. And the FCC at that time said there was 7,215 unserved or underserved broadband locations identified by the FCC in Miles County. And of that number, I'm from Flammable, sorry, but 4,400 of that was Frontier's coverage area. So that leaves 2,700 or 2,800 between CenturyLink and then AT&T. I don't know what kind of service AT&T has out here, but of that 4,400 that Frontier had, they only got 1.2 million out of, they were allocated considerably more over the 6-year term of the CAF project. But I don't, they can't tell us where that money went. CenturyLink was allocated 330 million over the terms of CAF 2. And like I said, we can't find out where that 330 million went. I don't know. I got that from Dennis from BSC.
Yeah, it would be, one thing we have not investigated, because all of the stuff with Wisconsin PSC is online, it's open to the public. When we have not investigated, where if that CAF 2 funding is available online and what that looks like. So maybe there is some information, it's just a matter of finding it. Okay, it's coming up on 8 o'clock, we've got another session. We've got another session on Thursday from 10:30 until 12:30. I'm sure, we'll talk about different things, have some good feedback. So thank you for coming, giving up your evening. We're gonna continue to keep you informed, and Boulder Junction is gonna get there. So thanks for coming and staying.